As we continue our journey looking at organisms, we're also going to look at how organisms don't, especially humans, or in particular, don't always maintain homeostasis. They don't always stay healthy. And part of the reason for not being able to stay healthy is a variety of types of diseases. So we're going to break these diseases down and look at two different types of diseases. So a disease is some type of abnormal condition that affects the body of an organism. So we'll focus on humans, but other organisms of all different sizes can also get diseases. For humans, we're going to look at non-infectious diseases and infectious diseases. So non-infectious diseases are going to be diseases that are caused by genetic or environmental factors. They're things that can't be transmitted from one person to another. We'll get into some examples of these in just a little while. Whereas infectious diseases are going to be diseases that are caused by pathogens. So a pathogen, we'll come back to this again later, but something that has invaded your body. So an infectious disease can be transmitted from person to person. These are the ones we are more familiar with, although you might be surprised at how many non-infectious diseases you are familiar with as well. So we'll start looking at non-infectious diseases. So diseases that are caused by genetics or environmental factors. So diabetes, color blindness, Down syndrome, sickle cell anemia, which is a blood disorder, heart disease, scurvy, cystic fibrosis, osteoporosis, cancer, and we'll actually look more specifically into cancer. So those are all examples of non-infectious diseases, so diseases you can't catch by coming into contact with someone who has that disease. It's either in your DNA or it can be caused by environmental factors, by something you've been in contact with, or choices that you've made about your surroundings. That could be things like the food that you choose to eat, the pollution you maybe choose or don't choose to be around but are around, and generally an unhealthy, maybe inactive lifestyle that you live. Whereas infectious diseases are going to be diseases caused by pathogens, things like viruses, bacteria, fungus, parasites. So anything that can enter your body from the outside. So these are influenza or the common flu, common cold, HIV, chickenpox, ear infections, strep throat, some that you maybe haven't heard about, meningitis, pneumonia, whooping cough, syphilis, athlete's foot, ringworm, yeast infections, malaria. These are all different varieties of infectious diseases or things that you can catch by coming into contact with someone or something else. So the cause is the pathogen, and those pathogens are viruses, bacteria, fungi, or parasites. When you're considering the different diseases that you may have, either infectious or non-infectious, there's going to be some courses of action that you'll want to take. Prevention methods. So things that you're going to do to avoid getting sick, either infectious or non-infectious. So these are the things, the prevention methods that you would do before you're affected by the disease, so to prevent them from happening. Examples that you could use would be vaccines, which we'll get more into later in the unit, exercise, a healthy diet, hand washing, getting enough sleep, boiling water to kill things that might be in the water that could infect you. So to keep yourself from getting sick, these are all tactics, and you would call those prevention methods, and they take place before you get sick. While you're sick, then you're going to use something called a treatment method. So these are going to help remove the symptoms, the pathogen, and or the disease tissue. So if you aren't being infected by a pathogen, maybe it's a non-infectious disease, you might try and remove that disease from your body. So this is going to be what a treatment method is, what you do while you're infected. Things you might do would be to take cough or cold medicine. You might use a steamy room. Sometimes when you're really sick, stuffy nose, you might go and sit in a bathroom that has had the hot shower or hot water running for a while. You might have surgery or radiation, chemotherapy for things like cancer. You might take something like an antibiotic for an infection caused by a living thing. So all things that you would do while you're sick to help either relieve or remove the symptoms of the pathogen, and then also to hopefully remove the pathogen or the disease itself. Many diseases are curable. And so these are things that you can do to completely remove the pathogen or the disease tissue from your body. So these can be treatment methods like surgery and antibiotics, but sometimes once you get to the point, sometimes those things actually remove the pathogen, and once they have removed it and you're no longer treating it, we call it a cure. So a pathogen, I've used this word several times. So pathogens are agents that cause disease. There's something that has entered your body that's caused a disease. And so examples of those would be microorganisms and viruses. And I put those into two different categories because, as you'll learn later, viruses are not living things. Whereas a microorganism, an organism is a living thing, and the prefix micro means very small or tiny. So microorganisms are organisms that can only be seen with a microscope. Many microorganisms don't cause disease. Things that don't cause disease might be like the bacteria that's used to make your yogurt. You have bacteria in your gut that you have to have in order for you to survive. But there are many microorganisms that do cause disease. So not all microorganisms cause disease, but microorganisms that would cause disease would be things like some bacteria, some microscopic fungi. In fact, all of the fungus that would make you sick would be microscopic. And, sorry, what am I missing? And then parasites, so things you can't see that you might see in your water, which we're going to go through the details of all the different types of microorganisms that could make you sick next. The viruses, though, are the one thing that's not a microorganism because they're not living. So viruses are non-living. We call them microscopic molecules because they are microscopic. You can't see them. And they're not a living thing because they rely on their host to reproduce. And the ability to reproduce was one of those characteristics of life. So a virus is not considered a living thing. But there are things that you can do to prevent a virus. Some of those include vaccines, getting enough sleep, keeping your body able to fight off things that it doesn't see or doesn't recognize, eating healthy, giving it the nutrients that it needs, and sometimes even washing your hands, depending on the virus, can be one of the best prevention methods that is out there. If you do get a virus, there's specific treatment methods that can go along with it too. So getting enough sleep is also a treatment as well as prevention. Eating healthy, providing the nutrients your body needs, is going to be a treatment. Getting enough fluids, so keeping your body hydrated. And again, hand washing so that you don't spread what you have to others, but also so you don't pick something else up new. So the methods that are treatment methods simply reduce the symptoms of the disease, but they aren't necessarily going to cure it. And when we're talking about viruses, they're for sure not going to cure it because viruses don't have a cure. We don't have any way, once you have a virus, to rid your body of it. Your body has to do that itself. So some examples of that would be polio or smallpox, diphtheria, the flu, influenza, AIDS, mononucleosis, so you would recognize that possibly called mono, or just a common cold is a virus, which there's thousands and thousands of different strains of the cold. Another disease, infectious disease, is bacteria. And bacteria is a living thing. So it's a microscopic prokaryotic organism, so a single-celled organism that does not have a nucleus. And they're found everywhere. But not all bacteria cause disease. In fact, most bacteria are good, and we need to have them around us in order for us to survive. But some of them do make you sick, and when they do make you sick, they can make you very, very sick. So it's really important to use the prevention methods that are available. There are some vaccines that can help with bacteria. Getting enough sleep, again, eating healthy and getting enough nutrients, and washing your hands is, again, one of the best ways to prevent allowing that pathogen into your body. So allowing the bacteria into your body. And then treatment methods are also going to be very similar to the prevention methods. Getting enough sleep so your body has the energy to fight it off. Healthy eating to get the nutrients so that it can fight it off. Getting enough fluids. Washing your hands. But another one is taking an antibiotic. So the word antibiotic, the word bio means life and anti means against. So the word antibiotic means against life. It's a medicine that stops the growth and reproduction of living things. It kills living things. So these are going to reduce the symptoms of the disease and attack the bacteria directly, hopefully. And that antibacterial, the antibiotic that you would take for a bacteria, can cure the disease. So tuberculosis would be an example, cholera, bacterial meningitis, strep throat, staph infections, whooping cough, and a urinary tract infection are all examples of bacterial infections. Fungus is one we don't often think of. You think of a fungus maybe that you see growing on trees, but microscopic fungus is one that can be a pathogen and make you sick. So fungus are both unicellular and multicellular. They're eukaryotic, so they have a nucleus and they have membrane-bound organelles, and they actually absorb their nutrients from around them, which makes them unique from other organisms. And the fungi that causes diseases are all microscopic. So the ones that are on trees are generally not going to be a pathogen for you. So prevention methods for fungus is going to be things like not sharing a hairbrush, wearing shoes in public places, giving your feet time to breathe so that they're not a good place for the fungus to grow, and then general good hygiene, washing your body so that there's not a place for that fungus to grow. And then treatment methods would be a cream or a shampoo, which is another type of antibiotic, but specific to antifungal, to help, and then keeping the skin clean and dry. So fungal infections are easy to treat because they usually are just on the surface of the skin, and they are either reduce the symptoms of the disease or they can attack the fungus and kill it. So the cure for a fungal disease would be an antifungal, again, another specific antibiotic. Things you might be familiar with would be ringworm, athlete's foot, diaper rash, yeast infections, thrush are all types of a yeast called candida. And lastly, parasites. Parasites are both unicellular and multicellular. They're single-celled organisms or multicelled organisms that have a nucleus, and they absorb their nutrients from another organism. So they steal nutrients from another organism and cause harm in the process. And then parasites often enter the body through the skin, mouth, or an open wound. So again, washing your hands, cooking meat thoroughly, washing fruits and vegetables, boiling your water, especially if you're a Boundary Waters kind of person or not drinking from streams. There are some vaccines that can help prevent pathogens, wearing bug spray, parasites. And the treatment for this, again, is going to be an antibiotic against life. This one is going to be specific to each specific parasite, and washing your hands. And the cures are those antibiotics that are very specific to each parasite. So malaria, African sleeping sickness, pinworms, lice, and Giardia are all examples of parasites that you can get depending on your location. So again, we're looking at two different types of diseases, non-infectious diseases and infectious diseases. The big difference to think and keep in mind is ones you cannot transmit from person to person versus infectious diseases that can be transmitted from person to person.